Ever feel like your conversations just aren't landing right? What if you could improve your communication skills and create stronger, more meaningful connections with those you love? As Brené Brown says, true belonging is not passive. It's a practice that requires us to be vulnerable, get uncomfortable, and learn how to be present with people without sacrificing who we are. In this video, we'll explore how vulnerability and communication go hand in hand, and why learning to express ourselves can lead to deeper, more fulfilling relationships. Self-Mastery and Mindful Connections presents expert tips on improving communication in relationships. Whether you're struggling to express yourself, dealing with misunderstandings, or want to connect on a deeper level, these strategies will help you strengthen your bonds with your partner, friends, or family. Stay to the end of the video, because we have a bonus tip to improve your communication. We've brought in Dr. Anita Patel, an expert in emotional intelligence and interpersonal relationships, to help us explore this.
Thank you for having me. Communication is at the heart of every successful relationship, but many don't realize how our communication styles can strengthen or weaken those connections. Today, I'll share practical tips on communicating more effectively and building stronger relationships. One of the most important things to understand is that communication isn't just about talking. It's about listening and connecting with the other person's emotions. When we're emotionally attuned to someone, we can better understand their needs and respond in ways that strengthen the relationship.
We've all been there when communication doesn't seem to work. Maybe it's a misunderstanding, or you feel you're not being heard. Most of us don't know how to communicate effectively, and that's where the problems start. Most of us don't think about where our communication habits come from, but we often mirror what we saw growing up, whether from parents or other authority figures. The problem is, what feels normal might not be healthy. Stick around, because we'll share the steps to break these harmful patterns and communicate more effectively. Think about the last argument you had. Did you shut down or get defensive? These habits often reflect how we handled conflict as kids, repeating patterns without realizing the damage they cause. For me, it wasn't that I adopted my father's way of handling conflict. I created my defense mechanism to protect myself from him. My father was intimidating. He would raise his voice, and I often felt stupid after our conversations. I just didn't feel safe being me. The only way I knew how to cope was to withdraw. I realized that if I shut down, refused to talk, or just agreed with him, I could get under his skin and end the conflict faster. It wasn't until years later that I realized how much this pattern was hurting my relationships. I wasn't protecting myself, I was perpetuating the cycle of hurt and separation. Julia shares,
"Every time my partner brought up an issue, I'd go silent. I thought staying quiet would prevent conflict, but it made things worse by creating emotional distance."
Breaking these patterns starts with awareness. The habits we used to feel safe as kids often don't work in adult relationships. Ask yourself, is this really helping or just familiar? From there, you can make conscious changes. As Brené Brown says, true belonging is not passive. It requires us to be vulnerable and uncomfortable, but it's necessary for growth.
reflect on your communication style. Do you shut down or avoid conflict when things get tense? Recognizing these patterns is the first step to breaking them. You're not alone if you're afraid to open up in your relationship. Many struggle with vulnerability, but learning to share what's happening inside can transform your connection with your partner. Stay with us for some powerful insights from Dr. Anita Patel on opening up without fear. Another common communication issue is avoiding those hard conversations. Whether it's sharing difficult emotions or unmet needs, we often retreat because we fear the consequences. In the past, it often felt safer to run away or find someone else to meet my needs. Instead of facing difficult emotions or uncomfortable conversations, I'd retreat. But I didn't realize that by doing that, I was demonizing my spouse and her behavior. Brené Brown captures this perfectly in Braving the Wilderness. Sometimes the most dangerous thing for kids is the silence that allows them to construct their own stories. Stories that almost always cast them as alone and unworthy of love and belonging. When we stay silent in relationships, we create false stories about ourselves and our partners, often leading to disconnection and pain.
Fear of rejection or judgment often stops us from opening up. But as Brené Brown says, true belonging is not passive. It requires us to be vulnerable and uncomfortable. Vulnerability is scary, but it's the key to true connection. Brené reminds us that pain will find a way to make itself known, no matter how much we avoid it. Pain is unrelenting. Despite our attempts to drown it in addiction or strangle it with hate, pain will find a way to make itself known.
The next time you feel like shutting down, pause. Instead of building another wall or looking for an escape, share a little of what's going on inside. Take one small step toward being open and give your partner the chance to support you. One of the biggest barriers to communication is the stories we tell ourselves. These stories often stem from past experiences and shape how we interact with others, particularly our partners. For many years, my wife believed that all men are cheaters and liars, which she witnessed growing up from her father. Even though I never gave her a reason to doubt me, that belief created unnecessary tension. There are times when triggers occur, and we still need to revisit the topic.
For Sarah, it almost cost her marriage. She created an unsafe, unhealthy atmosphere filled with raised voices, insults, and constant criticism, because that's how she learned to handle conflict.
I thought I was always right, and the only way to communicate was to fight and win. But I was pushing my husband away. It wasn't until he told me, "I don't feel safe here," that I realized how much damage I was doing. I had to change. Now I ask myself, is it true that we must fight to communicate? Is it true that I always have to be right? Byron Katie's method helped me dismantle these old beliefs, and now my husband and I communicate without fear or anger. It's not perfect, but we're healthier.
Byron Katie's method helps us question the stories we hold. The 4 questions can dismantle old patterns and build healthier communication habits. The 4 questions are: 1. Is it true? 2. Can I absolutely know that it's true? 3. How do I react when I believe that thought? 4. Who would I be without that thought? Challenging old stories, as Sarah did, is a powerful way to break unhealthy communication patterns. Letting go of these beliefs creates a safe, open environment where both partners feel heard.
Next time you react based on an old belief, pause and ask, is this really true? Walking through the 4 questions can shift your perspective and improve communication. We're just getting started. If you've ever struggled to open up, stick with us. We're about to share practical ways to build trust and deepen emotional connections. Now that we've discussed recognizing patterns and opening up, let's dive into vulnerability. This is the heart of all strong communication, but also one of the hardest things to embrace. Vulnerability means showing up, even when it's scary, being open with your feelings, thoughts, and needs. But the fear of rejection or judgment keeps us from it. The problem is that without vulnerability, a real connection can't happen. In my own life, I was afraid of vulnerability because I thought it made me weak. I didn't want to admit I had needs or felt hurt. But the more I kept those feelings inside, the more disconnected I became. Over time, I learned that true strength comes from honesty, even when uncomfortable. Let's hear from Ryan, who realized that vulnerability wasn't a sign of weakness, but strength.
For a long time, I thought being the strong, silent type was what I needed to do in my relationship. I didn't talk about my feelings because I thought that's what being a man was about. But over time, I saw that my partner felt distant from me. She'd ask me what was happening, and I'd brush it off. It wasn't until we had a serious talk that I realized I wasn't giving her anything to connect with. When I finally opened up, our relationship became a lot stronger.
Vulnerability is essential for building trust. When you allow yourself to be seen, even when it's uncomfortable, you allow your partner to understand and support you. It's not about being perfect. It's about being real.
The next time you converse with your partner, share a small piece of vulnerability, whether it's a fear, insecurity, or need. This will open the door to a deeper connection. You're almost there. We'll share how letting go of control can help you build a more connected and harmonious relationship. Don't miss out on this key insight. Another common barrier in communication is the desire to win. Whether it's proving that you're right, getting the last word, or controlling the conversation, the need to win can drive a wedge between you and your partner. In a relationship, when one person wins, both people lose. Communication isn't about competition, it's about connection. I've always been competitive. I ran track in high school and still compete at the master's level. I saw conflict as a competition, and I aimed to win at all costs. And not surprisingly, I won and lost my relationship. It took me a long time to realize that trying to win arguments was pushing people away. I had to learn that resolving conflict meant working together to find a solution, not beating the other person. Let's hear from Leah, who struggled with this issue in her relationship.
I always felt like I had to prove I was right in every argument. I didn't see how that need to win affected my partner. It wasn't until he told me how hurt he felt that I realized I wasn't fighting fair. I was fighting to win. Now I focus on resolving the issue together instead of being right.
Letting go of the need to win can transform your relationship. Focusing on teamwork instead of competing opens the door to real solutions and deeper connections.
Next time you disagree, ask yourself, am I trying to win or am I trying to understand? Shifting the focus from proving a point to finding a solution together will change the dynamic of your relationship. We've covered some important tips today, but communication is a huge topic, and there's still much more to explore. I'd love to hear from you. What communication challenges are you facing? Comment below and let me know which tips you'd like me to explore in future videos. As always, my goal is to over-deliver, so I couldn't leave without giving you one more powerful tip to take your communication to the next level. This bonus tip can make all the difference in building lasting, meaningful connections. And now, for that bonus tip we promised you. If you're serious about taking your communication to the next level, one thing can truly transform your relationship: creating a safe space for open communication. Many of us don't realize that our partners won't open up unless they feel emotionally and mentally safe. That means no judgment, no interruptions, and no immediate reactions. It's about giving them the room to be vulnerable. In my past relationships, I didn't see how unsafe I made my partner feel by interrupting or dismissing their feelings. I've learned that giving them a safe space to share without fear of judgment or criticism is essential. Let's hear from Megan, who learned how creating a safe environment for open communication helped transform her relationship.
My partner used to say he didn't feel heard in our conversations, and at first, I didn't understand. But when I stopped interrupting or getting defensive, something shifted. He started opening up more, and we connected on a deeper level. It made our relationship so much stronger.
Creating a safe space for communication is key. When both partners feel safe to share without fear of judgment or attack, they can connect more deeply and work through challenges together.
Here's a practice you can try. Set aside time for a conversation where your goal is to just listen without judgment. Let your partner share whatever's on their mind and resist the urge to respond or fix things immediately. Just listen and create that safe space for them. We've covered a lot today, from breaking old communication habits to embracing vulnerability and creating safe spaces. Building strong relationships takes time and practice, but you can start strengthening your connections immediately with these tools. What communication habits are you working on? Share your stories in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to subscribe for more tips on building lasting relationships.